We're going to do things a little differently today to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the publication of the Autobiography of a Yogi. We have a short video clip to show, but we also have some guest speakers. Surya Das will come up and give a reading from the autobiography, and we'll have Zach and Haley and myself will give a brief talk about what the book has meant to us, and then we'll watch the video. So sit back and enjoy.
So as Matt was saying, today's reading will be from Autobiography of a Yogi, from the chapter An Experience in Cosmic Consciousness. I made my way to Master's empty sitting room. I planned to meditate, but my laudable purpose was unshared by disobedient thoughts. They scattered like birds before the hunter. Mukunda? Sri Yukteswar's voice sounded from a distant inner balcony. I felt as rebellious as my thoughts. Master always urges me to meditate, I muttered to myself. He should not disturb me when he knows why I came to his room. He summoned me again. I remained silent. The third time, his tone held rebuke. Sir, I am meditating, I shouted protestingly. I know how you are meditating, my guru called out, with your mind disturbed like leaves in a storm. Come here to me. Snubbed and exposed, I made my way sadly to his side. Poor boy, the mountains couldn't give you what you wanted. Master spoke caressively, comfortingly. His calm gaze was unfathomable. Your heart's desire shall be fulfilled. Sri Yukteswar seldom indulged in riddles. I was bewildered. He struck gently on my chest above the heart. My body became immovably rooted. Breath was drawn out of my lungs as if by some huge magnet. Soul and mind instantly lost their physical bondage and streamed out like a fluid piercing light from every pore. The flesh was as though dead, yet in my intense awareness I knew that never before had I been fully alive. My sense of identity was no longer narrowly confined to a body, but embraced the circumambient atoms. People on distant streets seemed to be moving gently over my remote periphery. The roots of plants and trees appeared through dim transparency of the soil. I discerned the inward flow of their sap. The whole vicinity lay bare before me. My ordinary frontal vision was now changed to a vast spherical sight, simultaneously all perceptive. Through the back of my head I saw men strolling far down Rye Gate Road and noticed also a white cow who was leisurely approaching. When she reached the space in front of the open ashram gate, I observed her with my two physical eyes. As she passed by behind the brick wall, I clearly saw her still. All objects within my panoramic gaze trembled and vibrated like quick motion pictures. My body, Master's, the pillared courtyard, the furniture and floor, the trees and sunshine occasionally became violently agitated until all melted into the luminescent sea, even as sugar crystals thrown into a glass of water dissolve after being shaken. The unifying light, alternatively with materializations of form, the metamorphoses revealing the law of cause and effect in creation. An oceanic joy broke upon calm, endless shores of my soul. The Spirit of God, I realized, is exhaustless bliss. His body is countless tissues of light. A swelling glory within me began to envelop towns, continents, the earth, solar and stellar systems, tenuous nebulae, and floating universes. The entire cosmos, gently luminous like a city seen afar at night, glimmered within the infinitude of my being. The sharply edged global outlines faded somewhat at the farthest edges. There I could see a mellow radiance, ever undiminished. It was indescribably subtle. The planetary pictures were formed of grosser light. The divine dispersion of rays poured from the eternal source, blazing into galaxies, transfigured with ineffable auras. Again and again, I saw the creative beams condense into constellations, then resolve into sheets of transparent flame. By rhythmic reversion, sextillion worlds passed into diaphanous luster. Fire became firmament. I cognized the center of the Imperium as a point of intuitive perception in my own heart. Irradiating splendor issued from my nucleus to every part of the universal structure. Blissful Amrita, the nectar of immortality, pulsed through me with a quicksilver-like fluidity. The creative voice of God I heard resounding as Om, the vibration of the cosmic motor. Suddenly the breath returned to my lungs. With a disappointment almost unbearable, I realized that my infinite immensity was lost. Once more I was limited to the humiliating cage of body, not easily accommodative to the spirit. Like the prodigal child, I had run away from my macrocosmic home and imprisoned myself in a narrow microcosm. My guru was standing motionless before me. I started to drop at his holy feet in gratitude for the experience in cosmic consciousness which I had long passionately sought. He held me upright and spoke calmly, unpretentiously. You must not get overdrunk with ecstasy. Much work yet remains for you in the world. Come, let us sweep the balcony floor, then we shall walk by the Ganges. So that was a beautiful reading, one of the most inspiring in the book for me, because it describes what we're all seeking here on the path and what we found in the autobiography. I'm going to share a little bit of how the Autobiography of a Yogi inspired me and affected my life. It was 25 years ago in August, and I had been meditating on my own without a spiritual community. And, I was having an okay time of it, but I felt the absence of community, of friends, of support from other people who were looking for the same thing. And so I began to pray to God to show me a path that would be the right path for me. I don't think at the time I had an idea that there was a one path for me, but I was looking for what would suit my temperament and what would be helpful to me. And I had been praying like this for, I think, less than 2 weeks. It wasn't long. And one morning I went to breakfast on Roosevelt at the Sunlight Cafe, which is right by East West and by where our church used to be, although it hadn't moved there yet at that time. And I saw a picture of Yogananda, and it was actually this picture of Yogananda. And I think it was an ad in a magazine called Common Ground, and it wasn't an Ananda ad. And I don't even know how to explain it, but I instantly knew that this was what I was looking for. It was, I didn't hear words or anything, but I felt it in my heart. This is the answer to your prayer. This is what you're asking for. And so I had seen the picture before. I must have known that there was a book like this because I went to East West Bookshop and I looked for the book. I remembered seeing the picture before. And I found Autobiography of a Yogi, and I took it up to the counter. And Navritti, who was Kathy at that time, she said, "Oh, this is my favorite book." I still remember her saying that. And anyway, I bought the book and I took it home and I began reading it. And I just happened to be going on a trip to Atlanta. It was actually kind of a stressful trip. My ex-wife's grandparent was dying. And so there was a lot of tension and things going on. But I was reading during that whole trip, and I became so enthralled. And the stories themselves were wonderful. They were uplifting. The idea that we can seek God. I mean, it wasn't even, I meditated because I wanted to experience peace and I wanted to have purpose in my life. But this was like real purpose. It was all of a sudden the idea that the purpose of life is to seek God and to feel God in your own heart and to share that with others and to express that. It just wasn't something I'd ever thought of, and I was thrilled by it. But more than the stories, more than anything, there was a vibration. While I was reading it, I had, I guess what I could call a kind of subtle ecstasy. I mean, not, total bliss, but I was very much uplifted, very much in a sense of joy. As I said, there were stressful things going on around me, and I was just untouched by any of it. I was just in this place inside where I just felt divine love, divine joy, divine peace. And I felt that as Master's vibration. And, I finished reading the book, and I went and took a meditation class at East West, and I came to Ananda. And when I came to Ananda, and I met the people, and I heard the music, especially in the Festival of Light, it was the same vibration that I had experienced reading the book. And I just knew that I had come home and that this was what I was looking for. So.
Good morning. Morning. Well, I think like many of you all here, reading Autobiography was a profound moment in my life and a turning point, really. And reflecting on what to talk about today, I kind of realized I think it was, I was yearning for this book for most of my life. I remember being in Sunday school. I think I was about 5 years old, and I remember the teacher telling us, "Accept Jesus into your heart and you will be saved." And I remember thinking at that time, there's got to be more. There's got to be more to this than just that. And I remember all through middle school and high school having this desire to know what God was and to have a relationship with God. And a lot of my friends were Christian and seemed to feel that genuinely, but I could never really, the way that God was presented to me, I could never really fully in my heart say, yes, this is what I want, because it just was not, it wasn't big enough, to encompass, what I felt in my heart. And so when I went to college, I studied philosophy, and so that kind of satisfied me mentally, where I got to explore and ask these questions about, what is life and all of these things, but never really found something, and to a certain extent it was satisfying, but never really found what felt in my heart that was true, and that really, it's not that we were looking for God, and I think at that point I had kind of relaxed and stopped thinking I was going to find out what God was, but I could at least ask these questions, and so it wasn't really present, a strong desire, I have to find God. So that had relaxed a little bit, and then a few months after I graduated from college, I picked up the Autobiography. It had been gifted to me by my mom, Glenda, sometime I think in my senior year of college. Got it for Christmas. It sat on my shelf. I can still picture it sitting there in my room on my shelf. And so one day I picked it up and started reading it, and was totally thrilled and comforted by what those pages contained. It's what I was looking for. It was that more expansive, and again, like Suryadas was saying, it was a vibration and it was a feeling that this is true and this is real. And what was so comforting to me, that the God that Yogananda talked about was a God of love, and it wasn't exclusive to being a certain way, or whatever these limitations I had previously experienced, learning about what God was, were completely gone. And then it was so much further beyond what I ever imagined it could be. So when I was about halfway through reading the book, I got fired from my job, and my mom asked me, "Do you want to go to Ananda?" And I said, "Okay." And I didn't even really know there was a connection between Ananda and the autobiography that I was reading. I think she told me there was. So I was halfway through it, so I remember having it with me, bringing it there, and everybody at Ananda really, really loved this book, and everyone was asking me, "Have you read this book?" And I was like, "Well, I'm reading that book." And at the end of my week there, I had just been fed even more and felt, like Surya Das was saying, just felt the vibration and really felt at home and felt a lot of joy, and couldn't wait to continue reading the book. And I feel like I'm just, now still at the very beginning of tuning into the wisdom of that book, and it's a total guide for my life. And every time you read it, there's just more and more. And lately I've been listening to Swami Kriyananda reading it, and that has been another amazing experience. And, these little snippets that just stand out, it's as if you've never heard them before. So I'm so grateful for this book, and like I said, I feel like I'm just at the very beginning of tuning into what it has to offer.
Hi, friends. It's fun to kind of think back on these things and how the book and Master first comes into our lives. And I just remember the time in my life and where I was when Autobiography surfaced. It was through Haley. I can remember her reading this book and kind of being curious about it, but I was very much in my mind and not able to necessarily choose spiritual things at that point. My reality is I was looking for something real. That was how I thought about the world. I had been living in city after city, working in finance, and had reached a point where I realized none of this stuff was real. I didn't know that meant I should look for God. I just traveled everywhere, exploring everything, trying new things, and wanted to find something real. And actually, before even Autobiography, it was a book called Out of the Labyrinth that fell in my lap that really challenged that thinking process that I had to ask the right questions, to start looking for a relationship with something much bigger than just my own thoughts and the labyrinth that we can fall into in this world. And that really primed me for when I opened up Autobiography. And for the first time, I was reading a book that I didn't have to question. I could read it and not understand it, and yet I knew every word was truth and every word was real. And more so than any specific story that I remember in the book, it was just this feeling of, I don't need to understand this because it's true. I'm not there yet, and that's okay. But it's all real. Everything in that book was real. And so it was, and like Haley alluded to, as we grow in ourselves with the relationship to this book, it's not a book. It's a living reality. It's living truth. And so as we go deeper in ourselves, how many of you go back to this book time and time again for your inspiration, for that source of connection to Master? This book is real and it's living. And so constantly I've read Davy say this, I've heard Fremont say this. Something happens in our lives, we need to search for an answer. What do? You go and you open up Autobiography. And I think about the one thing that struck me the most about this, and it's Surya Das said, the quote about the center of the Empyrean, how he cognized it in his heart. And from the very first chapter of this book, Master is bringing something to the West that we so desperately need it's heart, it's love. He's bringing this from the East. He speaks of Divine Mother, of Kali, in a way that I had never been exposed to in Christianity. You know, we come from such a strong place of the Lord, the all-powerful Lord. This is real, this is truth. And yet, Master says the mother is closer than the father. We have to explore this personal relationship to God in that feminine aspect of love. And that, to me, every page, Master has his love and compassion for us in it. And it's such a beautiful living reality of love that he brought to the West. So, Om Guru.
I want to take you back a little bit, like about 45 years ago, something like that. My older brothers, my twin brother and my other brother, a year older, fresh out of high school, been out about a year or two. And the weekend comes. One of them goes to a party with a friend who lives down the street. He goes to this party, sits down on the couch. There's a book lit on the coffee table, Autobiography of a Yogi. So he picks it up and starts leafing through it. And he goes, "This is just absolutely incredible." He read the part in it about Yogananda's body in Forest Lawn and the incorruptibility of the body and stuff. And he was just amazed by it. My older brother, goes to a friend's house, same weekend. Goes to, they were going to go out, run around. The guy's mom says, "John," he says, "I got a book here I think you're really going to be interested in. It's called Autobiography of a Yogi. Here, go ahead and read it. I think you'll really enjoy it." And John looked at it and he thought, "Yeah, this could be good." So they come home, and a day or two later, my brother John's reading the book. He takes it into my brother Mark and says, "Look at this book." And it says, "As soon as I'm done reading it, I'll let you read it." And Mark looks up, and it's the exact same book. And they both dove into it immediately at that time and got the lessons from SRF and stuff. And they gave it to me, and I looked at it, and I read about, 20 some odd pages, maybe a little more, to the point where I heard Babaji rising out of a cave somewhere. And I'm going, "Are you kidding me? They're into this?" And I said, no, I don't think so. And I just simply wasn't ready for it. And so a year or two pass, and my brothers, they were both just totally into it. So he gives it to me again, and I was reading some other things that Yogananda wrote, and it was that thread of sincerity and truth in it that I just thought, there's something here. So I started reading the autobiography again. And then it was not only Babaji, but Babaji's sister rising out of another place in Benares on the Ghats. And I'm thinking, no, I'll stick to the Bible. This is just, I can't believe this. So again, I put it aside. But I began reading Man's Eternal Quest. And Yogananda kept saying in that book, he kept saying, "Don't follow me. Self-realization is your own realization. Find out for yourself. If it resonates with you, find God yourself." And finally, after all this time, it finally began to dawn on me. My conversion was a little different. Mine was like getting whacked over the head with a 2x4. I changed that fast. I literally had an experience where I realized that God was inside. And I went from one moment thinking that the Autobiography of Yogi was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever read, and the next thing I knew, I'd read it like 4 times in a row, because I just, Yogananda's teachings, there was a sincerity in it, and though it was the most ludicrous thing I had ever read, there was still a sense of sincerity, of realism to it. And I just couldn't say, no, this person's not right. I mean, I had to find out for myself. And that pretty much changed my life, you know. I will say it's really fun to come onto the spiritual path with brothers who kind of, you know, you feed off each other, you grow off each other. We finally found Ananda and came and listened to a talk with Swami Kriyananda. We all came to the parking lot at the same time while he was getting out of his car to give a talk at one of the schools. I think it was Seattle. It was a religious school, because he got out of his car and my brother jumps out of the car and says, "Can we help you?" Swami looks at us for a minute and he goes, "I think you can." So we asked this person where the building was. He says, "Oh, it's the building with the cross on it." Well, we looked around. Every single building had a cross on it. But to make a long story short, that was my introduction to Ananda, and the rest is history. But we're going to show a video clip that Ananda put together called The Spark. And it's about the autobiography and the 70th year. But I wanted to read the last paragraph in the autobiography. To finish this. The blessed role of Kriya Yoga in East and West has hardly more than just begun. May all men come to know that there exists a definite scientific technique of self-realization for the overcoming of all human misery. In sending loving vibrations to the thousands of Kriya Yogis scattered like shining jewels over the earth, I often think gratefully, Lord, Thou hast given this monk a large family. And we are a very large family.